Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across the ballroom as James Harrington and Olivia Bennet celebrated their engagement. Champagne flowed, and laughter sparkled nearly as brightly as the 5-carat diamond on Olivia's hand. They made a picture-perfect couple, he, the successful entrepreneur, she, the elegant social butterfly who'd captured his heart. When James's business partner raised a toast to their future, Olivia's laugh tinkled through the room. "I'm marrying him for the money, obviously," she announced, her smile dazzling. The room's laughter faltered as James's expression shifted. "Well, the prenup might change your mind," he replied lightly. In that fleeting moment, the widening of her eyes, the stiffening of her shoulders before she recovered her smile, something fundamental changed. A camera flash captured it all, preserving the instant when a joke revealed a truth neither was prepared to face. Morning sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow across James Harrington's penthouse. He stood at the marble island in his designer kitchen, watching Olivia arrange fresh-cut flowers in a crystal vase. Her diamond tennis bracelet, his gift for their 6-month anniversary, caught the light as she moved. "Perfect," she said, stepping back to admire her work. "These peonies are exactly the right shade for the dining room." James smiled, appreciating her eye for beauty, though he couldn't help wondering why she'd insisted on replacing the perfectly good arrangement from yesterday. He pushed the thought aside. "Coffee?" he asked, sliding a porcelain cup toward her. "You know me too well," Olivia replied, her practiced smile warming as their fingers brushed. "Bradley and Melissa were absolutely gushing about us at dinner last night. Bradley said, 'We're the couple everyone aspires to be.'" James nodded, sipping his coffee. "They're good friends." Though he sometimes questioned whether Bradley admired their relationship or simply the lifestyle his success had created. "The best," Olivia agreed, glancing at her watch. "Another of his gifts. I should get ready for brunch with the girls. They're dying for engagement party details." As she left, James gazed around his immaculate home. By any measure, they were living a dream. Yet something about the perfect symmetry of it all occasionally left him feeling oddly hollow. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows of the wedding planner's office as James watched Olivia flip decisively through sample books. 3 hours in, and they had already selected venues, caterers, and floral arrangements, all at the highest price points. "What about the ceremony itself?" James asked, turning to the planner. "I was thinking something meaningful, perhaps incorporating some family traditions." The planner nodded enthusiastically, but Olivia's attention remained fixed on a photo of an elaborate reception setup. "Look at this, James," she interrupted, sliding the magazine toward him. "Wouldn't this be stunning? Crystal chandeliers over the dance floor, ice sculptures at every table. Everyone would be talking about it for years." "It's certainly impressive," he conceded, "but I was hoping our wedding would feel more personal." He reached for her hand. "Maybe we could include readings that actually mean something to us." Olivia's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Of course, darling. We can do both." She turned back to the planner. "Now, about the guest list. I've added several of Daddy's business associates. And we simply must invite the Hamiltons. Their daughter just married that Saudi prince." From across the room, the planner's assistant caught James's eye with a brief, sympathetic glance before quickly looking away. Later, as they walked to the car, James said quietly, "It's starting to feel like we're planning a corporate event rather than our wedding." Olivia linked her arm through his. "It's the most important day of our lives, James. Don't you want it to be spectacular?" He did. But he couldn't shake the feeling that they might be defining spectacular in fundamentally different ways. The calligrapher mixed up the place cards again, Olivia said, her voice tight as she spoke into her phone. I need them redone by tomorrow morning. Yes, I understand it's last minute, but this is non-negotiable. James watched from the doorway as she paced their bedroom, surrounded by engagement party preparations. The event was less than 24 hours away, and the tension in their apartment had been building all evening. Everything okay? He asked when she finally ended the call. It will be, she said, checking items off a meticulous list. The florist is delivering at 9, catering at 11. The photographer wants to arrive early to capture some candid pre-party moments. James sat on the edge of the bed. Seems like a lot for an engagement party. I thought we agreed to keep it intimate. Intimate doesn't mean casual, James. Olivia glanced at her reflection, adjusting an earring. This is our first event as an engaged couple. Everyone who matters will be watching. Marcus, James's oldest friend, appeared in the doorway. Car service just called. They'll be here at 6 tomorrow. He raised an eyebrow at James. Quite the production you've got going. It's important to set the right tone, Olivia interjected before James could respond. Marcus, did you pick up James's new suit? On the chair, Marcus answered, his expression carefully neutral. Custom made, as requested. Perfect, Olivia said, barely looking up from her list. The Prestons confirmed. He just made partner at Goldman. The Blackstones, too. James noticed Marcus studying him with an unspoken question in his eyes. It'll be wonderful, James assured both of them, though a subtle knot had formed in his stomach. Tomorrow, they would celebrate their love in front of everyone who mattered. So why did it suddenly feel like preparing for a performance rather than sharing genuine joy? One more thing, Olivia added, her smile both dazzling and somehow calculated. I've arranged for a special champagne toast. It'll be the perfect moment to show everyone just how perfect we are together. The ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria sparkled with carefully orchestrated elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over tables adorned with white roses and gold-rimmed china. James stood near the center of the room, accepting congratulations from a steady stream of well-wishers, his hand never leaving the small of Olivia's back. They're perfect together, someone whispered just loudly enough to be overheard. Daniel Preston, James's business partner and oldest friend, tapped his champagne flute with a silver spoon. The room quieted as he stepped forward. I've known James since college, when he was living on ramen and big dreams, Daniel began, earning appreciative chuckles. And while I've watched him build an empire, what impresses me most is seeing him find someone who truly compliments him in every way. Guests nodded approvingly as Daniel raised his glass. To James and Olivia, may your life together be as golden as it looks tonight. Hear, hear! The crowd echoed, glasses lifted. Olivia beamed, leaning close to the microphone. Thank you all for coming to celebrate with us. Her laugh tinkled through the room. I'm marrying him for the money, obviously. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd, but faltered as it reached those who knew James best. His smile remained fixed, but something shifted in his eyes. Well, he replied, his voice light, but carrying a new undercurrent. The prenup might change your mind. The silence that followed lasted only seconds, but felt eternal. Olivia's perfectly composed face registered shock before she recovered with a tight smile. James has such a wonderful sense of humor, she managed, her fingers suddenly tense against her champagne flute. But in that unguarded moment, the widening of her eyes, the stiffening of her shoulders, something fundamental had changed. Several guests exchanged glances, uncertain whether they'd witnessed a playful exchange or something more revealing. Daniel stepped forward, smoothly redirecting attention. "To the happy couple," he announced, but his eyes sought James's with quiet concern. "You can't possibly be upset about a joke," Olivia said, closing the door of the private anteroom where they'd retreated. The sounds of the party continued, muffled beyond the thick oak panels. Everyone thought it was hilarious. James stood by the window, his reflection ghost-like against the darkness outside. Did they? Because it seemed like everyone realized it wasn't actually a joke. "Don't be ridiculous." Olivia's tone was caught between dismissive and defensive. "It's called self-deprecating humor. I was playing with the gold digger stereotype. Except your face when I mentioned a prenup." James turned to face her. "That wasn't humor, Olivia. That was genuine shock." She crossed to him, placing her hands on his lapels. "Darling, I was just surprised you'd say something like that publicly." "It caught me off guard." "So you'd be perfectly fine signing one?" Her hands paused their adjustment of his tie. "Is that really what you want to discuss at our engagement party?" Daniel's knock interrupted before James could respond. "Everything okay in there?" he asked, concern evident as he peered around the door. "People are starting to wonder where you've gone." "We're fine," Olivia answered quickly. "Just a little miscommunication." "James?" Daniel's gaze remained fixed on his friend. James felt caught between what he'd seen and what he wanted to believe. "We'll be right out," he said finally. As Daniel reluctantly withdrew, Olivia pressed a careful kiss to James's cheek, avoiding her lipstick leaving a mark. "Let's not ruin our special night over nothing," she murmured. "Everyone is waiting." James nodded slowly, allowing her to straighten his tie. Perhaps he had overreacted. Perhaps it had simply been an awkward moment blown out of proportion. But as they returned to the ballroom, he couldn't shake the memory of that split-second revelation, nor the sudden feeling that he might be engaged to someone he didn't truly know at all. It was past midnight when James's phone buzzed on the nightstand. Olivia had retreated to the guest bedroom after a tense, silent ride home. "To give them both space," she'd said. He reached for the device, expecting a message from Daniel. Instead, it was Marcus. "Check your email. Now." The subject line read simply, "You need to see this." James opened the attached video clip with growing dread. Someone had captured the exact moment. Olivia's joke, his response, and most damning of all, her unguarded reaction before she'd recovered her composure. The clip had already been viewed over 2,000 times. His phone rang in his hand. "Tell me you've seen it," Marcus said without preamble. "I'm looking at it right now." James's voice sounded distant to his own ears. "It's everywhere, James." Twitter, Instagram. Someone even added dramatic music and slow motion to her reaction. James sank onto the edge of the bed. "How bad is it?" Comments are split between people who think it's hilarious and those who are tagging it with #GoldDiggerAlert. Marcus hesitated. "There's more. Someone's dug up posts from Olivia's old Instagram account, before she met you. Lots of comments about marrying up and finding a provider." A soft knock at his bedroom door made James look up. Olivia stood in the doorway, her face pale, her phone clutched in her hand. "James," she whispered, "have you seen what's happening online?" Their eyes met across the room, and in that moment, the careful facade between them seemed to crumble entirely. "I have to call you back," James told Marcus, never breaking eye contact with Olivia. As he set down the phone, he noticed her expression had shifted from shock to something closer to calculation, as though she were rapidly assessing damage control options rather than feeling the pain of exposed truth. "We can fix this," she said finally, stepping into the room. "I've already called a PR consultant. We'll release a statement saying it was an inside joke taken out of context." But James wasn't listening. He was looking at the stranger before him, wondering how he'd never truly seen her until now, and wondering what other revelations the growing light of morning might bring. Morning light filtered through the blinds as James sat at the kitchen island, staring at his laptop. Olivia paced behind him, phone pressed to her ear, her voice shifting between professional calm and urgent whispers. "No, we need the statement released within the hour," she insisted. "Frame it as an inside joke taken out of context." "Yes, absolutely emphasize our 5-year history." James scrolled through social media comments, each one more painful than the last. Always knew she was after his money. That reaction when he mentioned a prenup, though. Poor guy, just found out what everyone else already knew. "This will blow over," Olivia said, ending her call and joining him at the island. "People have 10-second attention spans. By tomorrow, they'll be outraged about something else." Daniel arrived carrying coffee and pastries, his expression grim. "The video's up to 70,000 views. Someone gave an anonymous quote to page 6. "What quote?" James asked. Daniel hesitated. "That you two have been fighting about finances for months." "That's ridiculous," Olivia interjected. "Who would say that?" "Is it ridiculous?" James looked up from his screen. "We fought just last week about the wedding budget." "Every couple discusses finances, James." Her tone remained measured, reasonable. "That doesn't mean there's any truth to this gold-digger narrative." Marcus arrived next, taking a seat beside James. "We have options. My PR team suggests a joint interview, maybe with Ellen or Oprah." "Perfect." Olivia brightened. "We'll show everyone how solid we are." "Are we?" James asked quietly. The room fell silent. Daniel and Marcus exchanged glances. "Maybe we should give you two some space," Daniel suggested. "No," Olivia said quickly. "We need to present a united front." After they left, Olivia sat beside James, her voice softening. "I know this is awful, but we can get through it. I love you, not your money. You know that." James wanted desperately to believe her. "Then why joke about it?" "It was stupid, I admit that." She took his hands in hers. "But one thoughtless comment doesn't define our whole relationship." He nodded slowly, allowing himself a sliver of hope that perhaps this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. Midday found James in Daniel's office downtown, away from the constant interruptions of PR consultants and Olivia's damage control efforts. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, but James's attention was fixed on the tablet in his hands. "I didn't want to show you this at your place," Daniel said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "But as your friend and lawyer, I felt you should see it." The screen displayed screenshots of text conversations between Olivia and her friend Melissa, dating back nearly 2 years. Olivia: "Just had dinner with James Harrington, the venture capital guy." Melissa: "OMG, he's loaded right." Olivia: "Billionaire with a B. And he's actually not terrible looking. This could be it, Mel. My retirement plan, LOL." James scrolled through more messages, each one more damning than the last. Discussions of his net worth, calculations of potential settlements, jokes about prenups and how to avoid them. "How did you get these?" James asked, his voice hollow. "Melissa's husband works for me. When the video went viral," he came forward. Daniel leaned against his desk. "He's been uncomfortable with their friendship for a while. Says Melissa's changed since meeting Olivia." James set the tablet down carefully, as if it might shatter. "There could be an explanation." "James," Daniel's voice was gentle but firm, These aren't out of context. There are hundreds of messages over 2 years. She seemed so genuine. James stared out at the skyline, remembering their first date, their holidays together, the quiet moments that had felt so real. "I think some of it was genuine," Daniel offered. "People are complicated. She probably does care for you in her way. Just not enough to overcome her interest in my bank account." The words tasted bitter. "What will you do?" James stood, straightening his shoulders. "I need to hear her explanation first." There's always two sides. But as he gathered his things to leave, a message notification appeared on his phone. From Marcus. "Found something else. Meet me at your place, ASAP." The sliver of hope he'd been clinging to grew thinner still. Evening shadows lengthened across James's living room as he sat across from Olivia. Marcus stood by the window, silent witness to the unfolding confrontation. Between them, on the coffee table, lay a manila envelope. "I want to believe you," James said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "I've wanted to believe you all day." Olivia reached for his hand, but he pulled back slightly. "James, I know those texts look bad, but they were from when we first met. People say stupid things. It doesn't reflect how I feel now." "That's what I thought too." James pushed the envelope toward her, until Marcus found this. Hesitantly, she opened it, then froze as she recognized the contents. Draft emails to a divorce attorney dated just 3 weeks after their engagement. Questions about asset discovery, inquiries about California's community property laws, and most damning of all, her own handwritten notes calculating James's net worth and potential settlements based on different marriage durations. "This isn't what it looks like," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then what is it?" James asked simply. "Research. Just being prepared." Her eyes darted between the men. "Everyone does this." "No," James said quietly. "They don't." "Where did you get this?" Anger crept into her voice as she turned to Marcus. "You went through my things?" "The housekeeper found it while cleaning last week," Marcus replied evenly. "She gave it to me because she was concerned." Olivia stood suddenly. "This is an invasion of privacy. I won't be ambushed like this." She gathered the papers, shoving them back into the envelope. "When you're ready to discuss this rationally, without your friends interfering, let me know." She stormed toward the bedroom, but paused at the doorway. "And just so you know, looking into legal matters doesn't mean I don't love you. It means I'm intelligent enough to protect myself." After she left, silence filled the room. Marcus placed a hand on James's shoulder. "I'm sorry, man." James stared at the empty doorway, the final pieces of the puzzle falling into place, the careful calculation behind every seemingly spontaneous moment, the strategic affection, the meticulous construction of a relationship designed to access his wealth. "Don't be sorry," he said finally, a strange calm settling over him. "The truth hurts, but living a lie would have been worse." The revelation was complete. What remained was to decide what to do with this painful gift of clarity. 3 a.m. found James alone in his study, the room lit only by a single desk lamp. He held the engagement ring between his fingers, watching how the diamond caught the light, a flawless stone he'd selected because he thought it matched a flawless love. The irony wasn't lost on him. Outside, rain tapped against the windows, matching the hollow rhythm in his chest. Olivia had retreated to the guest room after their confrontation, claiming she needed space to process the unfair accusations. James had let her go without argument, too exhausted to continue the charade. He placed the ring on his desk beside the scattered evidence of betrayal, Printouts of the text messages, the legal inquiries, the calculations of his worth. Not his worth as a man, a partner, a human being. Just the cold assessment of his financial value. How had he missed it? The signs had been there from the beginning. Her interest in his business, her subtle steering of conversations toward his investments, her enthusiastic planning of increasingly lavish events that showcased their status. He'd interpreted it as shared joy in their success, not a calculated performance. James rubbed his temples, replaying every significant moment of their relationship through this new lens. The romantic weekend in Paris. Had she been genuinely moved by his proposal, or merely satisfied that her strategy had succeeded? The nights they'd spent talking until dawn. Had any of her stories, her vulnerabilities, her dreams been real? He moved to the window, watching raindrops trace paths down the glass. 2 years of his life invested in someone who had seen him as little more than a walking bank account. The thought hollowed him out, leaving a void where certainty had once lived. What did it say about him that he'd been so easily deceived? Was there something fundamentally broken in his ability to judge character, to recognize authentic connection? The ring caught the light again, drawing his attention. Such a small object to represent such a massive misjudgment. He picked it up once more, feeling its weight. By morning, he would need to decide what to do next. But for now, in the quiet darkness, he allowed himself to simply feel the full measure of the loss, not just of Olivia, but of the future he'd believed they were building together, and perhaps most painfully, of his trust in his own judgment. Midday light filled the conservatory, harsh and unforgiving, compared to the intimate glow of their usual meeting places. James had chosen this room deliberately. Its glass walls and open design left nowhere to hide. Olivia sat across from him, perfectly composed in a cream silk blouse, her expression a practiced blend of concern and injured innocence. "I've been thinking all night," she began, "and I understand why you're upset. Those notes look terrible out of context, but you have to understand—" "I understand perfectly," James interrupted, his voice calm despite the storm inside him. "I understand that you researched my finances before our first date, that you strategically pursued a relationship to secure financial stability, that our entire connection has been constructed on a foundation of deception." Olivia's composure slipped slightly. "That's not fair. Whatever my initial thoughts might have been, real feelings developed. I do love you, James." "In what way?" He leaned forward. "Do you love who I am, or what I can provide?" "That's a false distinction. You are what you've built." Her voice hardened. "Everyone enters relationships with expectations. Mine are just more practical than most." James nodded slowly. "At least we've arrived at honesty." He placed a folder on the table between them. "I've spoken with my attorneys. The penthouse is yours until the end of the month. Your name has been removed from all accounts except the joint one, which contains enough for you to establish yourself elsewhere. You're ending our engagement based on some old texts and notes." Her voice rose. 2 years thrown away because I considered practical aspects of our relationship? I'm ending it because it was never real." He removed his watch, her Christmas gift, and set it beside the folder. "You built a performance around what you thought I wanted while calculating your potential return on investment." "That's cruel," she whispered, tears forming, "and untrue." "Is it?" James slid the engagement ring across the table. "This is yours to keep or sell. Your choice." Olivia stared at the ring, then at him. The calculation behind her eyes was visible now that he knew to look for it. weighing options, considering angles, assessing damage control possibilities. "You'll regret this," she said finally, her voice cold. "No one will understand why you threw away something so perfect. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even real." James stood. "And I'd rather face the truth, however painful, than live a comfortable lie." As he walked toward the door, Olivia called after him, "What about the prenup joke? Was that a test?" James paused without turning. "It wasn't planned, but your reaction told me everything I needed to know." The silence that followed contained its own finality, the period at the end of a story that had been fiction from the first page. The charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum represented James's first public appearance since ending his engagement. He adjusted his cufflinks, new ones, purchased to replace the pair Olivia had given him, and scanned the crowded room. Whispers followed him like shadows as he made his way toward the bar. "There he is," he overheard someone murmur. "Can you imagine discovering your fiancé was just after your money? I heard she's dating a hedge fund manager already," another voice added. Daniel appeared at his side, offering a steadying presence. "Hanging in there?" "Barely," James admitted. "Everyone's discussing us like we're characters in a soap opera. People love drama when it doesn't involve them." Daniel guided him toward a quieter corner. "Olivia's been making the rounds with her version of events, claims you became paranoid and controlling." James absorbed this with a grim nod. Not surprising. Across the room, Melissa, Olivia's former confidant, approached cautiously. "James, I want to apologize. I should have said something sooner about how she talked about you." The sincerity in her eyes only deepened his sense of having been surrounded by deception. "Why didn't you?" "I believed her when she said it started as a joke, but became real." Melissa looked down. "Maybe I wanted to believe it." As she walked away, James noticed other reactions, sympathetic glances, respectful nods, and occasionally thinly veiled curiosity. His private pain had become public entertainment. Later, near the coat check, he encountered Bradford Williams, a prominent investor he'd been courting for months. "James," Bradford said gruffly, "heard about your situation. Tough break. Thank you for understanding if I've been somewhat distracted in our discussions," James replied. "Actually," Bradford surprised him by saying, "seeing how you handled this mess, with dignity, no public mudslinging, tells me something about your character. I'd like to revisit that investment opportunity." As James drove home alone, streetlights illuminating an empty passenger seat, he felt the full weight of his new reality. His relationship was over. His judgment was in question. His private life had become public fodder. Yet somewhere beneath the devastation lay a thin sliver of something he couldn't yet name, a sense that facing this painful truth had revealed something essential about himself, about authenticity, about the possibility of rebuilding on a foundation of something genuine. He pulled into his driveway, a house that suddenly felt too large, too empty, too filled with memories built on sand. As he stepped from the car, the night air cool against his face, James wondered if he would ever trust himself or anyone else again. A week had passed since James ended his engagement. The penthouse, once vibrant with life and purpose, now felt cavernous and empty. He'd barely left his study, subsisting on delivery food he hardly tasted, and sleeping fitfully on the leather couch rather than facing the bedroom he'd shared with Olivia. Rain streaked the windows as he sat staring at a half-empty tumbler of scotch. His phone lay silent beside it. He'd stopped answering calls days ago. The business that had once consumed his attention now seemed trivial, distant. What was the point of building wealth if it only attracted those who valued the wealth, not the builder? On the desk before him lay a photo of his parents on their 40th anniversary, their faces lined with age, but eyes bright with genuine affection. His father, never wealthy but always wise, had built a life of quiet dignity with a woman who'd stuck by him through financial struggles and health crises. What would he have thought of James's spectacular failure to judge character? When the doorbell rang, James ignored it. It rang again, more insistent. Then came the unmistakable sound of a key in the lock. Daniel, using the emergency key. "You look terrible," Daniel said, standing in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat. James didn't look up. "Go away." "Not happening." Daniel removed his coat. "Eleanor's worried. So am I." "I'm fine." "You're not fine." No one would be fine. Daniel approached the desk, taking in the stubbled face, rumpled clothes, and unfocused eyes of his friend. "But you're not the first person to be deceived by someone they loved, and you won't be the last." Something in his tone, not pitying, but matter-of-fact, made James finally look up. "How would you know?" Daniel's expression shifted subtly. "Because I've been exactly where you are." He glanced at the door. "And there's someone I'd like you to meet." James was about to refuse when he caught sight of an older man waiting quietly in the hallway. Tall, distinguished, with kind eyes that somehow held both gentleness and unmistakable strength. "This is my Uncle Joseph," Daniel said, "the wisest man I know." For the first time in days, James felt a flicker of something beyond despair, a fragile curiosity about the man whose presence seemed to fill the room with quiet dignity. The kitchen island held 3 cups of steaming tea. Joseph sat across from James, his weathered hands wrapped around his cup. Unlike the therapist James had briefly consulted, who'd offered clinical observations, Joseph simply listened as Daniel explained the situation. "So," Joseph said finally, his voice rich and measured, "you feel you've lost not just your fiancé, but your ability to trust your own judgment." James nodded. "How could I have been so blind?" "We often see what we're prepared to see," Joseph replied. "Tell me, would you have recognized Olivia's true nature when you first met her?" "Obviously not," James said bitterly. "Then perhaps you should consider that you've gained something, not just lost it." James looked up, confused. "Gained what?" "The truth," Joseph said simply. "And truth, however painful, is always a gift." "Some gift," James murmured. "Consider the alternative," Joseph continued, stirring his tea. "You might have married her, had children with her, spent decades in a relationship built on deception. Instead, you discovered the truth before those deeper bonds were formed." The perspective shift was subtle but profound. James had been focusing solely on what he'd lost, not what he'd avoided. "I still feel like a fool," he admitted. "Being deceived doesn't make you a fool. It makes you human." Joseph's eyes held a depth of experience. 45 years ago, my business partner, my best friend since childhood, emptied our company accounts and disappeared. I lost everything, including my belief that I could recognize integrity in others. "What did you do?" James asked. "Initially, exactly what you're doing." Joseph smiled slightly. "Then I realized something important. The betrayal wasn't a reflection of my judgment, but of his character." "And did you ever trust anyone in business again?" James asked. "I built a new company," Joseph replied. "More successful than the first. But I did it with clearer eyes, not cynical, but discerning. I learned to watch what people do, not just what they say, to test character in small ways, before trusting in large ones. Wisdom comes at a high price, James said. The highest, Joseph agreed. But think of it this way, you've already paid for it. The only question is whether you'll use what you've purchased. Something shifted in James's chest, not happiness, but the first stirrings of possibility. The pain you feel now, Joseph said, is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a wiser one. The next morning, James stood before the bathroom mirror, razor in hand. He studied his reflection, the stubbled face and shadowed eyes of a man he barely recognized. With deliberate care, he began to shave, each stroke revealing a cleaner, more familiar version of himself. Joseph's words had settled into his consciousness overnight, not eliminating the pain, but providing a framework to hold it. The betrayal wasn't a reflection of his judgment, but of Olivia's character. He hadn't lost everything, only an illusion, and painful truth was better than comfortable deception. After showering, he dressed in fresh clothes and opened the curtains, allowing sunlight to flood the penthouse for the first time in days. When Daniel arrived to check on him, he found James at his desk, not staring at old photographs, but reviewing business documents. "You look better," Daniel observed cautiously. "I feel different." James closed the folder he'd been reading. "Not good, exactly, but clearer. Joseph has that effect on people. I've been thinking about what he said." James stood, moving toward the window. "About truth being a gift. And I think he's right." James turned to face his friend. "I need to stop hiding in here." "What are you going to do?" James walked to a cabinet and removed a stack of papers, designs for a community center his foundation had been planning to build. "Though I'm going to focus on creating something authentic, something of real value." Daniel studied him. "The project you shelved when Olivia wanted to focus on the celebrity charity gala instead." "Exactly." James spread the blueprints across the desk. "A place that will actually help people, not just create photo opportunities." As they discussed the project, James felt something he hadn't expected. Not happiness, but purpose. A sense that moving forward meant channeling his pain into something meaningful. Later, as they walked through the park, James paused by a construction site where workers were demolishing an old structure to make way for something new. He watched as they carefully separated materials, some to be discarded, others to be repurposed in the new building. "That's what I need to do," he said suddenly. "Sort through the rubble, figure out what to discard and what to keep." "Meaning?" Daniel asked. "I can't let this experience make me cynical or bitter. But I can't go back to being naive either." James continued walking, his stride more purposeful. "I need to build something new, something with a stronger foundation." The path ahead wasn't clear yet, but for the first time since the engagement party, James felt certain that there was a path. The painful gift of truth had shattered illusions he'd cherished. But perhaps, he thought, it had also cleared ground for something more genuine to grow. James chose the law offices of Stern Associates deliberately. Neutral ground where neither he nor Olivia held home court advantage. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic city view, a reminder that life extended far beyond his personal crisis. Daniel sat quietly in the corner, present but unobtrusive. When Olivia entered, she wore the understated elegance that had once captivated him: cream silk blouse, tailored slacks, minimal jewelry. Her smile held practiced warmth. "James!" She moved to kiss his cheek, but he stepped back slightly, maintaining physical distance. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice steady. "I've asked you here to formalize the end of our engagement." Her smile faltered. "I thought we were meeting to discuss moving forward." "We are." James gestured toward the conference table where documents waited. "Just not in the way you hoped." Daniel nodded subtly from his position near the window, a silent affirmation of James's resolve. "This seems unnecessarily formal," Olivia said, her voice softening. "We could discuss this over dinner. Remember that little place in Napa where—" "No." The single word carried quiet finality. "I've had the return of your personal items arranged. They'll be delivered this afternoon." James slid a folder across the table. "This outlines the dissolution of our shared financial arrangements. Your name has been removed from all accounts, except the joint one we established last year. That account contains $50,000, more than enough for you to secure new accommodations." Olivia's facade cracked slightly. "You're treating this like a business transaction." "That seems fitting, given your approach to our relationship." She reached for his hand, but he withdrew it calmly. "James, people say things they don't mean. They make mistakes. What we had was real." "Parts of it may have been," he acknowledged, "but a relationship built on calculated deception isn't one I choose to continue." He removed his watch, her Christmas gift, and placed it on the table beside a small velvet box containing the necklace he'd given her for her birthday. "I'm keeping the ring," she said suddenly, her tone hardening. "It was a gift." "Keep it," James nodded. "It seems appropriate that you should have something of monetary value from our time together." The subtle shift in Olivia's expression, from calculated warmth to cold assessment, confirmed everything. In that unguarded moment, he saw with perfect clarity what he'd been unable to see before. "Is there anything else?" he asked quietly. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You'll regret this, James, not the ending, but the way you're doing it." "I disagree." He stood, extending his hand formally. "I wish you well, Olivia." As she left, James felt neither triumph nor despair, only the quiet certainty of having done what was necessary to reclaim his dignity. 3 days after their meeting, James's phone displayed Olivia's name for the 5th time that morning. He declined the call and continued reviewing architectural plans for the community center project. Marcus entered his office carrying coffee. "She's persistent. Called me twice yesterday." "What did she want?" James asked, not looking up from his work. "To explain her side of the story, to get me to intervene." Marcus shrugged. "The usual tactics." James nodded, unsurprised. Joseph's words echoed in his mind. "Watch what people do, not just what they say." His phone chimed with a text message. "James, please. 5 minutes. Coffee at Westfield's. I deserve a chance to explain. What we had was too special to throw away like this." He set the phone down, without responding. "You're not going to answer?" Marcus asked. "There's nothing more to discuss." The office intercom buzzed. "Mr. Harrington, there's an Olivia Bennett here to see you. She says it's urgent." James and Marcus exchanged glances. "Send her up," James said after a moment, "and stay nearby, please." Olivia arrived carrying a small gift bag and wearing an expression of contrite vulnerability. "You haven't answered my calls." "I've been clear about my decision," James replied, remaining seated at his desk. She placed the gift bag before him. "It's the watch. I shouldn't have taken it. I was hurt and angry." James made no move to touch the bag. "Thank you for returning it." "That's all you have to say?" Her voice trembled slightly. 2 years together, and you can't even look me in the eye?" "What would you like me to say, Olivia?" He met her gaze directly, his voice calm. "That you'll listen, that you'll consider that there's more to me, to us, than what you think you discovered." She leaned forward. "People make mistakes, James. They say stupid things. That doesn't erase everything else." "I agree," he nodded. which is why I've been reflecting on all the smaller moments that I dismissed or rationalized. The pattern was there all along. Her expression shifted subtly. So, one mistake erases everything good? It wasn't one mistake, James said quietly. It was a sustained deception revealed by one unguarded moment. Olivia's composure cracked, her voice hardening. You're making a mistake. Do you know how many men would— I'm sure many would, James interrupted gently. And I hope you find someone whose priorities align with yours. She stared at him, searching for a vulnerability to exploit. Finding none, her shoulders slumped slightly. Is there anything else? He asked. My parents cut me off, she said suddenly. They're humiliated by what happened. I need more time at the penthouse. The agreement provides for 30 days, James replied. That's sufficient. Marcus appeared at the doorway, a silent reminder that James wasn't facing this alone. Olivia gathered her purse, her movements stiff with barely controlled anger. You'll regret this. No, James said with quiet certainty. I don't believe I will. After she left, Marcus shook his head. She really doesn't get it, does she? No, James replied, returning to his blueprints. But that's no longer my concern. The Foundation Gala at the St. Regis Ballroom represented James's first major social appearance since formally ending his engagement. Soft jazz and the murmur of conversation filled the elegant space as he circulated among donors, discussing the community center project with renewed passion. James! Eleanor pressed and air-kissed his cheek, her husband Bradford nodding beside her. The plans for the East Side Center look wonderful, so much more substantive than the celebrity event Olivia had planned. It's where our focus should have been all along, James acknowledged. Sometimes we need a course correction. Eleanor lowered her voice. I should tell you, she's been making calls, trying to secure invitations to events like this. I suspected as much, James said, unsurprised. Nobody's biting, Bradford added. Seems people prefer authentic philanthropy to social climbing. Across the room, James noticed William Chen, a notoriously reclusive tech investor, speaking with Daniel. William had declined every previous invitation to their events. Later, as James discussed funding allocations with the foundation board, William approached. Harrington, he said without preamble, I've been watching your work from a distance. Never cared for the society photo ops, but this community center concept has substance. Thank you, James replied. It's where my heart's always been. I can see that now. William nodded. My foundation would like to match your investment in the project. As they shook hands, James caught Daniel's satisfied smile from across the room. The evening continued with similar encounters, some supportive, others awkwardly curious, a few subtly probing for gossip. Throughout it all, James maintained the same dignified approach he'd established with Olivia, neither dwelling on the past nor pretending it hadn't happened. Near the event's conclusion, he found himself speaking with Sarah Miller, the wife of his former CFO, who had left 2 years earlier amid whispered rumors of marital problems. I've been meaning to reach out, she said, her expression sympathetic but not pitying. What you're going through, I understand more than most. Robert's affair, James acknowledged quietly. Sarah nodded. He was good at creating a public narrative that made me seem unreasonable. For a while, I believed it myself. How did you move forward? He asked. By remembering that my worth wasn't determined by his choices. She smiled gently, and by discovering that most people can recognize authenticity when they see it. As James drove home that night, he reflected on the evening's interactions. The community he'd feared might judge him had instead largely affirmed his choices, not through dramatic declarations of support, but through the quieter signals of respect, increased donations, new partnerships, authentic conversations. The pain of betrayal hadn't disappeared. But standing firmly in his truth had revealed something unexpected, a foundation of genuine relationships and purposeful work that had been there all along, waiting to be recognized. 6 months after the engagement ended, autumn painted Central Park in shades of amber and gold. James walked the familiar path to his foundation offices, savoring the crisp morning air. The community center project was now fully funded and under construction, ahead of schedule and with greater community support than they'd initially projected. Inside his office, Daniel waited with coffee and the morning briefing. "The quarterly reports are in," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. "Foundation donations are up 38% over last year." James nodded, unsurprised but gratified. People respond to authentic purpose. "And to leadership with integrity," Daniel added. "Also, Sarah Miller called. She's joined the board of that women's shelter we're partnering with." As they reviewed the day's agenda, Marcus arrived with an unexpected update. "I thought you should know. Olivia's moved to Chicago." James looked up. "How did you hear?" "Bradford's firm handles some legal work for the boutique she was working at. Said she left without giving notice a couple weeks ago. Apparently her parents finally sold the Hamptons house she was staying in after they cut her off." James absorbed this information without satisfaction or malice, simply as a fact. "She's working at a department store in Chicago," Marcus continued, "living in a studio apartment, complete lifestyle change. No one from the old social circle has heard from her," Daniel added. "It's like she disappeared." James returned his attention to the foundation reports. "She's rebuilding. We all do what we need to." Later, as he walked through the construction site of the community center, James reflected on the contrast between their paths. While he had reconnected with his true purpose and values, Olivia had lost the lifestyle she'd cultivated so carefully, not through any action he'd taken against her, but as the natural result of choices made. That evening at Joseph's home for their now regular chess game, James mentioned what he'd learned. "You don't seem pleased by her difficulties," Joseph observed, moving his bishop. "I'm not," James replied simply. "What would be the point? Many would find satisfaction in what some might call justice." "It's not justice or injustice," James said, studying the board. "Just consequences. We all face them eventually." Joseph nodded approvingly. "That distinction matters. Consequences teach. Vengeance destroys." As James drove home that night, he realized something had shifted within him. The news about Olivia had touched him not with vindication or pity, but with a simple recognition. They were both, in their different ways, facing the truth of who they were and what they valued. And in that recognition lay an unexpected grace, the freedom to wish her well on her journey, even as he continued on his own. The Chicago Conference Center buzzed with activity as philanthropists and nonprofit leaders gathered for the National Community Development Summit. James navigated through the crowd toward his panel discussion on public-private partnerships, nodding to colleagues as he passed. Rounding a corner, he came face to face with Olivia. She wore a simple black dress, not designer, but tasteful, and carried a tray of coffee cups. Her hair was pulled back in a practical style, and she wore minimal makeup. For a moment, neither spoke, mutual shock freezing them in place. "James," she managed finally, her voice softer than he remembered. "Olivia." He noted her name badge identified her as event staff. "I didn't expect to see you here." An awkward silence stretched between them. The Olivia before him bore little resemblance to the polished social strategist he'd known, and not just in appearance. "I should get these to the panel in room C," she said, gesturing with the coffee tray. "Of course." She turned to go, then stopped. "I'm on break at noon, the garden terrace, if you wanted to talk." James considered for a moment. "All right." The terrace was quiet, away from the conference bustle. Olivia sat at a small table, tension evident in her posture as James approached. "Thank you for coming," she said. He took the seat across from her. "How are you?" "Surviving." She gave a small, self-deprecating smile. "Starting over, I suppose." "Marcus mentioned you'd moved to Chicago." She nodded. "After my parents sold the house, I needed distance from New York, from who I was there." James studied her, noting the absence of her usual calculated charm. "And now you're working events?" "And as a sales associate at Nordstrom." She met his gaze directly. "It's honest work. Something I never valued before." "It is," he agreed simply. "I owe you an apology," she said suddenly. "A real one, not a manipulation. What I did, who I was with you, it wasn't right." The words hung between them, surprisingly genuine. "What changed?" James asked quietly. "Reality," she replied. "Losing everything has a way of clarifying what matters." She looked down at her hands. "I've had to face some ugly truths about myself." "That can be a gift," James said, "though it rarely feels like one at the time." "You said that once before, about truth being a gift." She looked up. "I thought you were being self-righteous." "Now I think you were just further along than I was." As they spoke, James realized he was witnessing something he hadn't expected: genuine growth, born of difficult consequences. Not complete transformation, perhaps, but the beginning of self-awareness. "I should get back," she said eventually, "but I wanted you to know I am sorry. And in a strange way, I'm grateful. This isn't the life I would have chosen, but it might be the one I needed." As they stood to part, she hesitated. "Are you happy, James?" "I'm at peace," he answered truthfully. "Building something meaningful. And yes, finding happiness again." She nodded, a flicker of genuine warmth in her smile. "Good. You deserve that." They parted without dramatic gestures or promises to keep in touch, just two people acknowledging a shared past while walking separate futures. As James watched her return to her duties, he felt something unexpected, not the rekindling of old feelings, but a quiet appreciation for the mystery of human growth and the unexpected grace of seeing someone begin their own journey toward authenticity. Spring sunlight streamed through the windows of the newly completed community center as James guided board members through the final inspection before next week's grand opening. The building hummed with purpose: classrooms for adult education, daycare facilities, job training spaces, and counseling offices. The solar panels exceeded efficiency projections, he explained, pointing to the monitoring system. "We'll be able to expand the computer lab with the energy savings." Among the visitors was Claire Winters, an environmental engineer whose firm had consulted on the project. While the others continued the tour, she lingered, studying the rainwater collection system with professional interest. "The integration with the building's primary systems is impressive," she noted, her focus on the technical details rather than social niceties. "Most projects like this treat sustainability as an afterthought." "It was central to our vision from the beginning," James replied. "Function and values aligned." Claire nodded, a small smile softening her serious expression. Rare to find that alignment, in projects or in people. As the tour concluded and the board members departed, Claire remained, examining the community garden plans displayed near the entrance. "We're still looking for expertise on the garden design," James mentioned, "if your firm has recommendations." "Actually, I volunteer with the Urban Gardening Coalition," Claire said. "We specialize in edible landscapes for community spaces." They moved to the coffee shop across the street, spreading the garden plans across a small table. Claire made thoughtful annotations, her suggestions practical and innovative without being extravagant. "The community should be able to maintain this themselves," she explained. "That's when these spaces truly become their own." James was struck by her focus on substance over appearance, so different from his experiences with Olivia. When Claire spoke about her work, her passion emerged not as performance, but as genuine commitment. "Would you be interested in officially advising on the garden project?" he asked. "I'd like that." She gathered her notes. "Though I should warn you, I'm very hands-on. Expect to get dirt under your fingernails." "That sounds perfect," James replied, surprised by how much he meant it. As they scheduled their next meeting, James felt a quiet awareness of something new taking shape. Not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something different. Something built not on dazzling first impressions or calculated charm, but on shared values and authentic connection. Walking home through the park, where spring buds promised new growth, James reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The pain of betrayal had not vanished entirely, but it had transformed into something valuable, a deeper capacity for discernment without cynicism, for openness without naivety. Whether his tentative connection with Claire would grow into something more remained to be seen. But the possibility itself, of genuine connection based on mutual respect and shared purpose, represented a triumph he couldn't have imagined during those dark days after his engagement ended. Some broken things, he realized, were never meant to be repaired, only released, making room for something stronger and more authentic to take root in their place. 1 year to the day after his engagement ended, James stood on the rooftop garden of the community center, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in hues of gold. The garden was flourishing. Claire's design had transformed what was once empty space into an oasis of life and purpose. Below, he could hear the sounds of the evening adult education classes winding down, voices filled with purpose and hope. "Penny for your thoughts," Joseph said, joining him by the railing, their weekly chess game finished early. James smiled. "I was just thinking about journeys, how rarely they lead where we expect." "The best ones never do," Joseph replied. James ran his hand along the wooden railing, once rough, now smoothed by time and elements. "A year ago, I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. Now, I realize what I actually lost was something that never truly existed." "And what you found instead?" "Truth," James answered simply. "Painful at first, but ultimately liberating. The truth about Olivia, yes, but more importantly, about myself, what I value, what I'm willing to accept, what truly matters to me." The garden lights flickered on as darkness deepened, illuminating the path forward while leaving the distant views still visible. "You know," James continued, "the strangest gift from all of this was learning that uncomfortable truth is infinitely more valuable than comfortable deception. I would never have chosen that lesson, but I'm grateful for it now." Joseph nodded. "The most important wisdom rarely comes when we're comfortable. I see it in the people who come through these doors." James gestured toward the center below. "So many of them facing difficult truths of their own, about their education, their finances, their relationships. The ones who grow aren't those who avoid pain, but those who move through it with purpose." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the city lights beginning to twinkle like earthbound stars. "Claire seems like a remarkable woman," Joseph observed. "She is," James agreed, a gentle smile softening his features. "Whether we become something more remains to be seen. But whatever happens, I'm approaching it with clearer eyes, not cynical, but discerning, watching what people do, not just what they say." "The wisdom of paying attention," Joseph said. As they prepared to leave, James took one last look at the garden, at the beauty that had grown from what was once empty space. Like the garden, his life had taken new shape, not despite the painful clearing that preceded it, but because of it. Some broken things were never meant to be repaired, only released, making room for something more authentic to take root in their place. That, perhaps, was the most unexpected grace of all.